Hi everyone, my name is Phyllis Amon. I'm so proud to be the host of the Golden Years, Understanding Better Living. Today we have two wonderful guests with us, Kristen Cusato and Carolyn DeRocco, who are representatives of the Alzheimer's Association Connecticut chapter. I'm so thrilled to have both of you here today. It's such an important topic. People need to know about the information that's about Alzheimer's, disease and the association. So, I wanted to start out today because I'm a speech pathologist by profession, and I've worked with so many people who have Alzheimer's disease or dementia, and very often people don't understand the difference between the two. So I thought that maybe you could give our viewers some information about that.
Yeah, sure. So dementia really is a group of symptoms. And so those symptoms of dementia would be problems with memory, cognitive thinking, and some behavior issues. It's kind of like an umbrella term. Alzheimer's disease is the most common form of dementia. There's over 70 different forms of dementia. Alzheimer's disease is the most common, so you hear that interchangeably very often.
So what other conditions would there be that would cause dementia that people might recognize?
So dementias that are not reversible, so somebody may have Lewy bodies dementia, frontal temporal dementia, so that maybe somebody has had several strokes and they have a vascular dementia. So there's different diseases or different reasons why somebody has the symptoms of dementia.
What about Parkinson's disease? Does somebody with Parkinson's disease, could they potentially have dementia as well?
Potentially, not always. Sometimes people have Parkinson's disease with dementia symptoms. Sometimes there's some Parkinsonian type attributes that happen with a Lewy body dementia. So you can also have mixed dementias, and I would not want to be a neurologist to try to diagnose. Some people can have several different things or diseases going on that are causing the dementia symptoms.
Okay, so that's great for people to know, because I think that people just think Alzheimer's and then that's just like one term and it covers everything. It really doesn't.
And I often hear a lot when someone will say, oh, he just has dementia, he doesn't have Alzheimer's, thank gosh, right? But it's not necessarily the case, right? There is something leading to what's happening to them, and you really should go find out from a doctor what's really going on.
So in terms of that, if people have Alzheimer's disease and then they say, oh, we just have dementia, would there be a difference in what they would see in terms of symptoms or behaviors?
So yes, a neurologist or geriatrician or a good diagnostic center. So I think it's important for somebody who is concerned about their memory, if the doctor says, I think you have some dementia symptoms, to say, what do you think is causing that? Can you be a little more specific? To really feel empowered to say, can you let me know what might be causing these symptoms of dementia that I have?
So if a doctor doesn't use the term Alzheimer's disease, should people be like relieved, like you say, or should they be equally concerned because dementia is also progressive, is it not?
So Alzheimer's disease, again, one form of dementia, is a progressive disease. So many of the irreversible dementias are progressive. Now we encourage, and the association, one of our missions is to encourage early detection. Because we don't want someone to miss something that's reversible. For example, someone may have symptoms of dementia, so they may have some memory loss, problems in thinking, my executive function, maybe a little behavior, personality changes, but it could be caused by something else. For example, maybe their medications are mixed up, and it's a result of medication issues. Maybe their thyroid, they have a thyroid condition or a thyroid disease that needs to be addressed. Maybe B12 deficiency. So there's many causes for someone to have dementia symptoms, and it's really important for somebody to find out what might be that cause.
So how would people know the difference between some normal memory issues and something like dementia?
Well, I think that it's really important to realize what kind of resources we have available, right? So we teach education classes all over the state, in person and online. There's a lot of online training that you can go to find out, and you can go to our website, which is alz.org/CT, and you can find out a lot of answers to questions. But that's just to initially do your homework. But there is a big difference. Alzheimer's and dementia, it's not normal aging. It's not like, okay, grandma turned 90, put her in the back room, she's got that senility thing. That's not true. That's not a real thing. Not people who are 100 are super sharp and don't have any symptoms at all, right? So this is not a normal sign of aging. So you really need to know the difference. You really need to educate yourself about what it is, and then you need to take those memory concerns that you have, to a doctor, because it's really important, as Carolyn was mentioning, to get an early diagnosis. And that's really something we're pushing now. And June is Alzheimer's and Brain Awareness Month. Yeah. And we're really pushing folks to have those difficult questions with your loved one. Be brave and ask, and hey, mom, or hey, grandma, this is something, or hey, husband or wife, there's something we really need to talk about, and then take those concerns to a doctor.
So I'm sure for the person who feels they may be having those symptoms, that sometimes is probably a difficult thing to acknowledge or admit. How do people deal with that?
So some people do have the insight that they have memory issues. Again, depending on how it's affecting our brain. Again, our brain is an organ that's being affected by this disease. So specifically with Alzheimer's disease, say. So if somebody's having problems with their memory, they may be aware of it and they may want to have that discussion. I think there's a stigma about the disease, and I think we need to talk about this. It's not someone's fault. But again, as Kristen shared, we have trainings on what are the 10 warning signs. But just for a few different signs. So it's not normal aging in the respect that its memory changes. So if you never knew people's birthdays, and that would be normal maybe. But if you always knew dates, my mother knows everyone's birthdays and will call everyone. If that starts, changing, that might be a flag to me. But it's also memory changes that are disrupting your daily living, and that's a key aspect. We may become forgetful, but when it really interferes with my daily life and my work or my leisure or just my safety, then that's really where you want to have a conversation with your doctor.
I'm sure a lot of viewers could probably relate to this, and you probably hear this sometime, which is why I asked the question. You go into a room and you forget what you went there for, or you can't find something, you swear you know where you put it, and you start to think to yourself, as an older person, I am a little bit of an older person, oh my God, is this some kind of change that's taking place? So it's anxiety producing.
Right. So definitely I think looking at the 10 warning signs and seeing if those are significant, really bringing somebody with you to the appointment so that they can, especially if you're having some memory issues, that they can really understand what the doctor is sharing with you.
Yeah, but on the other side, if you think about it, some people have no, as Carolyn mentioned, have no idea this is happening. Right. When I have a conversation with you, Phyllis, you're going to know that I said the same thing 4 times in 1 hour, but I might not know that I did that.
Although my son tells me you just told me that 3 times, but that's a different issue.
I think you're trying to get the point across, right?
Exactly.
And have him not, but there could be, so that's why the family members and the loved ones or the neighbors or people see them, that's why it's really good for them to have this knowledge and education so they can be aware of the changes in their loved one. It's changes in behavior, For example, my mother had Lewy body dementia, and that's unfortunately, she had it for just 4 years, and she had something called younger onset. When you're diagnosed below the age of 65, it's younger onset dementia, because most of the people are diagnosed after the age of 65. And so she would do things that were odd in behavior-wise. She was always a to the penny checkbook person. She started having a lot of trouble with numbers and was completely making checkbook mistakes. She started leaving the garage door open at night, so that became a safety issue. And the neighbor's like, why are you leaving the door open? She was forgetting the processes to wrapping up the house for the night.
And Kristen, I remember you sharing with me that mom loved coffee, and all of a sudden now mom is making tea. Yeah. And if you think about making a pot of coffee, it's many steps.
Correct.
Again, one of those issues in the 10 warning signs is multitasking becomes very difficult. So someone may change some of their habits of a lifetime, and now mom was making tea. I remember you sharing.
It was just a couple
steps. Less steps. So maybe you're seeing people, or maybe they're not. Maybe they're using the microwave and not making a big dinner because they're kind of using their own strategies to live well and change some of the things that they were used to doing.
I knew somebody recently who told me a story about her mother, I believe it was, and her mother wasn't bathing anymore, and she couldn't figure out why that was. So one day she went to her mother's house and said, you're not bathing, show me, let's go to the shower and show me how you do this. And her mother had forgotten, really, how to turn on the shower, how to take her clothes off, and like you say, multitasking, do those steps. People don't think of that as different tasks, but it really does have many different steps to it.
It also could be that you step into the bathroom, you look at the shower and you say, I just did that. but you might have done it a week ago.
Right, exactly.
You know, it's interesting. They say that one of the women who, so we have an early stage group, early stage social engagement program at the association, where these are individuals living with dementia. It could be different forms of dementia, different causes. And again, they want to live well. How do I live well? And there was a woman in the group said, you know, I was diagnosed a year ago. I'm not dying tomorrow, so how do I live well with this disease? So we do have programs even on our online called Live Well, but also we have early stage social engagement groups where people with the disease can come and be with others to feel supported, to learn strategies. And just as we're talking about tasks, I remember there's a gentleman that said, I went upstairs to get my black socks in my bathroom, you know, in my bedroom, in my drawer. And I'm okay, I'm focused getting my black socks. And my wife yells, honey, get my white sweater. And he says, Carol, now I can't do anything. It's that difficult for me.
Right.
And I think I have become a better teacher listening to individuals diagnosed, sharing their stories, and verbalizing the difficulties that they are having. Because really, we would be able to grab the sweater, but that was too difficult for him then to process those two things.
Right. You know, it's interesting you say that about early onset. And I did a seminar a couple of months ago, actually, and this gentleman came up to me, kind of sheepishly, though he was a tall gentleman in his late 50s, it looked like, and he asked me, it was in a seminar on caregiving, and he asked me if he should really be there because his wife was diagnosed with early onset. And I mean, even saying it now, to tell you the truth, my heart drops. And I told him, of course. So at the beginning of the seminar, I asked people to raise their hands, who's carrying, and he couldn't even really raise his hand, and he didn't want to let anybody know. So people are embarrassed, not only the person who has the disease, but their loved ones. People really struggle with this, don't they?
Carolyn was talking about our early stage engagement groups, which are people with the disease and then their care partner, right? So when they come to these groups, it's essentially a support group, but there's so much living and learning and activities that they do as well. It's great because it's a judgment-free environment. Nobody judges anybody else. And that's a similar thing. We have 90 support groups for all different types of caregivers across the state. And that's a great place for that gentleman to go.
We recommended that he contact the Alzheimer's Association and go to that support group.
Because when you get in that sort of group, everyone, I mean, it's so amazing because it's such a sharing time. It's a venting time. It's a sharing time. There are some laughs. There are some tears. You know, every group has its own way of breathing and living. But your mom worked well on that. Maybe I should try that. Or that
people
tip
have different
for doing
strategies.
that, and it's great to share.
Yeah. So talking about all of this, how many people in the state of Connecticut, or what's the incidence of people with Alzheimer's disease either in the state or in the country, actually?
Well, right now, the new statistics just came out, and there are 78,000 people that we know of diagnosed with Alzheimer's in Connecticut alone, and 178,000 caregivers. And most of those caregivers are providing unpaid care. Of course, it's hours and hours. But the statistic-wise, as far as develops the disease, they determine that it's every 65 seconds that someone actually develops Alzheimer's.
Wow, that's really incredible.
And I think, Phyllis, the two main important things is our education and support. You know, to not be afraid to talk about this disease so that we can get educated about how to live well. Again, communication, learning how to effectively communicate so that the caregiver could possibly look at a trigger that might escalate a behavior and recognize that trigger and hopefully prevent or stop that trigger from happening. So really ways that people can have better quality of life, both for the caregiver, professionally and family caregiver, and for the person diagnosed. So the education is really key, and the support.
Find that in terms of the education, because I work with people on communication and empathy and understanding how you say what you say, and the connections that you need to make so that the person maybe can understand you better by looking at them, by repeating it a couple of times, by having the person repeat back to you what you said. It's very important in terms of the communication process, and eliminates a lot of frustration, because you don't want the caregiver or the other person getting frustrated and angry, which in turn is going to set up a cycle.
The most important thing that I think I learned as a caregiver, and I think that it's something that caregivers go through, and then it's just a light bulb, it's a mind switch, is to meet the person with dementia where they are. Right? So if someone says, it is Tuesday and I have to go pick up my daughter from soccer practice, and she's 80, so her daughter clearly is not in 3rd grade anymore, but they think that she thinks it, you meet them and say, okay, you know what? She called and she's going to stay after and get some tutoring. Let's talk about what you're going to make for dinner. So it's a meeting them where they are, distraction, redirection to something that may be a more pleasant conversation. But these are tips and tricks that we teach in these classes that it's hard for people to do. We can't expect everyone to know how to do these things.
Correct.
It's not automatic. You can pull it out of your pocket.
No, and it's education. It's not only education, but it's practice.
Yeah,
I mean, like I said, as a speech pathologist, I work with people and with families, and it's a process where you have to learn it and you have to practice it. So let me ask you this question. So let's say the person says that, and the person who has dementia insists that no, they're going to pick up their daughter at soccer practice right now because it's 3 o'clock. So how would somebody handle that if those, diversions weren't effective?
So, when we teach, we want to have a toolbox, right? And what works today may not work tomorrow, but we want to use distraction. So it's really important to understand person-centered care, I think, for all of us.
Oh,
know what does
absolutely.
the person love? So it may be that they love peanut butter, nut butter cookies. So if they're having this fallacy that they're going to the soccer game, think about what do they love, and can you use distraction or diversion to say, you know what, we're going to go there. If we still have some time, but would you mind having a cup of tea with me and sitting down? And hopefully, when I teach, a yes may often lead to another yes. Yes, they'll sit with me and have this tea, and then maybe yes, we can bring them to another program and use that distraction. And hopefully, not always, it's not going to work always, but these tools can help us. The goal really is to, in your presence, through education, whether you're a family member or a professional, in your presence, can you decrease agitation rather than increase it?
Absolutely.
There's absolutely things we can do that will increase it.
Right.
We're not going to get rid of all these challenges, or I always say expressive behaviors, expressive emotions, but can we, in our presence, decrease it for that person and have them have a better moment?
And I think that's the key, a better moment, because it's really only about now.
Right.
And I think that people, because they're struggling with an entire situation, they're thinking of it in totality instead of, this is what I'm dealing with right this minute, and this is the challenge right now. Once we get past this, then the next thing is the next thing.
And I think understanding the caregiver's need, this is emotionally, physically, and financially draining. And they're losing somebody that they love. So supporting that caregiver, giving them these strategies, but understand that these are not easy strategies, because we're sad where we're losing somebody. This is a very long journey and a long goodbye. So supporting them in that at the same time while teaching them strategies that might help.
So for as a caregiver, fellas, I was just going to say that caregivers need to know that they need to take care of themselves.
Oh,
and that's also another light bulb moment that comes later, unfortunately, but if we can get it to them early, when they're ready, they're going to realize they need to take care of themselves. For me personally, and I keep going back to stories with my mom, because that's just really how I learned a lot of things, also from Carolyn, because she was an amazing teacher. But from my mom, I learned that spending 4 to 6 hours with her, if it wasn't she wasn't really in tune, or she wasn't lucid, or I was really upset, that's not doing either of us any good.
Right.
So I learned that when it's appropriate, I can shorten those visits. Right? So it's different things that you need to do. It's self-preservation. It's a mourning every day. You're mourning a loss of each duty or each ability that your parent or that your loved one is losing. So you're mourning that. So it's a really long, hard process. But another thing that I learned, and I think it's really important for people to share and realize, is that, like you mentioned, living in the now and living with that moment. And if there's a good, lucid, positive moment, and you've got a great memory, or you're going to go on a nice trip, gosh, wrap your arms around that,
take that,
and grab it, and remember it, and photograph it, and just have it, because you have to hold on to those beautiful moments.
I agree. I tell people that even if in a difficult day, because let's say somebody's living with you and you don't have the time to shorten the visit, but if there's a period of time when the person takes a nap, or if you can have somebody from the community come and a friend just to provide a break, even if you can do something that you enjoy for 5 or 10 minutes, even if it's walk outside, even if it's watch a TV show that you enjoy, or listening to some music, or go outside and get a breath of fresh air. It's very important, and I think people need to forgive themselves for feeling that they need a break, because there is a sense of guilt, but you really have to also acknowledge you're doing a wonderful thing.
And often a care partner or caregiver might feel like they're no longer the care partner because they've reached out, and I always say, you are still the #1 care partner. If you are a family member and you need services, which you're going to need help with this, and that's okay. In my 30-some-odd years, I have never met someone that could do it alone, and that's okay. But to give, whether it's a home care agency, a skilled nursing facility, assisted living, give them as much information about the person that you love, their likes, their dislikes. You are giving them the information that's going to help that care So you still are their number one caregiver, but you do need a break. You need to have some respite for your own health.
You know, I talk about caregiving, and I just gave a speech actually on elder care in America, No Moral Dilemma, and I was talking about caregiving. And I was saying to people that, you know, there are a lot of cultural expectations, family expectations about taking care of your loved one, having them live with you, not having them go to a memory care unit or a skilled nursing facility. But I think it's something that you just said that's very important, that you still are an important part of the caregiving process by letting people know what the person's likes and preferences were, habits. Those are all very important. And, you know, I was meeting with somebody in a skilled nursing facility recently, and I was asking him, he was the administrator, if they have any kind of book that they set up when somebody comes to the facility, so that if they have new staff members, you know, come to that unit, that they understand that the person loves vanilla ice cream, or they don't like to be touched, or, you know, whatever it is, you know.
We do train the trainers. We have a person-centered habilitation training, and it really focuses on the importance of person-centered care and sharing, not only if a facility has that information, how do you share it with the rest of the staff? Very important to share that person-centered, and again, likes and dislikes.
Right, absolutely.
What will bring this person happiness, what will make them upset. If somebody was bitten by a dog when they were younger, they may not want to go to pet therapy, and they may not be able to share that with you. So really important to share who that person is.
Because those memories are the ones that come back to you, really, those long-term memories.
Long-term, not the short, exactly.
Yeah, and they really affect your behavior, your perceptions, you know, whatever
I think that's,
it is.
you know, one of the things that you're talking about, that even if you end up, you know, a family-based decision, if you place someone because you're not able to do it by yourself anymore, so someone's in an assisted living or a facility, you still are, and you need to be their biggest advocate.
Absolutely.
So you need to be there to make sure that everything is going the right way and the way, you know, that you need to. And there are all sorts of things we have, you know, we have tips on our website on how to choose a facility or how to do the interview process to make sure it's right for your loved one, and how to choose a home health agency, what questions to ask. And there's a lot of information, I think, that, you know, just your gut and trusting your gut is a big thing.
Right.
But also there are a lot of other things that you can do.
Yes, I agree. I very much tell that to people. Because I've worked in 40 skilled nursing facilities, you know, I kind of know the nuts and bolts of how it works, so I tell people, you know, important questions they should ask that a lot of people maybe wouldn't think of and wouldn't know, but yes, it's very, very important not to just go and say, this looks like a beautiful place.
To visit. And I always, you know, we try to encourage, again, we're in the moment of, and we're exhausted, we're caregiving, and we're sad about losses, but if we can plan ahead, it's one of the things we always try to encourage. And I always say, if you plan ahead and don't wait for a crisis, you will have many more choices. Often we hear on our helpline, I need to Mom needs to go somewhere tomorrow, I need surgery, and there's a crisis situation. So I always say, you may never need a service, but if you did, what are your top 3 choices of home care, of assisted living, of skilled nursing, of family and friends that would come, so that when you may need that, you don't have to have a crisis and not have as many choices as you would have if you pre-planned.
So I tell people, plan by choice, not by crisis.
Absolutely, yeah.
And I say being informed is being forearmed.
Absolutely.
Because you need to have the information so you know the right questions to ask, and kind of have an idea maybe of what some of those answers should be, the ones that you feel you need for your loved one to get the best care possible.
You're talking about caregiving, being prepared. Also, the person with the disease and the purpose of getting an early diagnosis. Well, what can we do? Why should we get early diagnosis? So that you can plan for your future.
Right.
So that you become an active part in the decisions of, do I stay home? Is it going to be a situation where I'm going to be placed? I need to talk about my money with a legal and financial advisor.
Right.
There are all these things. Do I want to at some point try to go into a clinical trial situation? There are all these things that if you get diagnosed early, you can be an active part in the discussions of how the rest of your care is going to go.
Right.
And that is such an important thing that people are like, you know what, I'm just going to back. Well, then you wait for your crisis, and then you can't. And at very strong examples, it's hard to think about, but do not resuscitate orders. These are things you need to discuss. Have a will.
Healthcare proxy.
All these things that are very important to discuss ahead of time, because you don't want to be forced with all those decisions when someone's had a heart attack, and now what do you do?
Right. You know, and we are going to bring people into the program to discuss those things as time goes on. And you know, I spoke with somebody the other day when you're talking about, let's say, the possibility of moving to an assisted living facility or a skilled nursing facility. So I spoke with somebody who works with people, and this is probably something people don't think about. How are they going to downsize? How are they going to distribute their belongings? Yeah. Who's going to get them? Do they need an estate sale? Yeah. How are they going to get out of their house or sell their home? Right. So, you know, those are all different kinds of, you know, pieces of the process, I'd say, that we're going to bring into the program.
And those are resources, the Alzheimer's Association, that we have for families and individuals. So the training about, again, first of all, understanding what are the warning signs, effective communication, understanding and responding to behaviors, but also we have topic sheets on all of these things, how to make the move. So our website is loaded with information. We have ALZ/care, where you can discuss maybe you read about agitation or maybe wandering and say, why might this person with dementia be doing this? And then how can I now best respond as a caregiver? And often we may think it's a different response, but it's, again, that education. All the trainings that we do out in the community, we also have free online. So often I will do a training and someone says, I wish my sister could have been here with me today. Right. And I say, you know what, the same thing I'm teaching you right now, you can go home, your sister in the privacy of your own home, can revisit this exact training. That's terrific. What about people in the community, like first responders? I mean, are they aware of this information? Do they get trained?
Yeah, we have a great training called Approaching Alzheimer's, and we have taught a number of firefighters, EMTs, police officers, really all across the state. And it really is teaching them, because sometimes they are the very first person who encounters someone who may be having these memory issues, right? Because perhaps there's a fall and they can't get up, or they have an emergency, or there's a fire because they left something on the stove. Sometimes that EMT or paramedic or something is the very first person who sees it. So we go through these classes that they can also take online, because we know they have different shift work.
That's free online for each shift. Yeah.
And they can learn about how to communicate, what things to look out for. Is it a hoarding situation? Is their mail backed up for a long time? Is there rotten food in the fridge? Right. Like, what's happening around? They can just be aware of the whole situation, so that they know that they can give them services. Now, here's another thing that we've yet to mention, and is one of the most important things that we provide. We have a free 800 helpline, 24/7.
Wow, that's terrific.
And the number is so crucial, because you can call any time of the day or night about anything, about, gosh, I need to vent because I can't handle how my mom is behaving, to, I need a doctor for myself, to, is there a clinical trial within 30 miles? And it's 1-800-272-3900. And it's on all of our information.
Can you repeat that number again?
It's 1-800-272-3900, and that's our 24/7 helpline with any question you have about anything about dementia.
So if people go to your website, I assume that the number is on there as well.
And then if people want to come and have a care consultation, they may want sometimes the helpline is great for information, where is the nearest support group, but if they really want to come and just talk about this disease in a safe, non-judgmental environment, they can schedule a care consultation with our staff.
Oh, that's terrific.
Yeah. And they help guide you through the process, and that's the point. It's care consulting, right? It's taking you through this process, because, as you know, there's so many different angles and so many things to think about, but you have somebody who can kind of guide you, and that's great.
So what about, so this is what's happening in Connecticut. What about advocacy in Connecticut at the legislative level, and what about at the national level?
So we have advocates assigned to several lawmakers, and we have this really strong advocacy program that folks go to Hartford, and then they also go to Washington, and then advocates from all across the country. Every state has this program where they tell their stories and affect change. So that when a lawmaker is going to be somewhere on the floor and they hear something about a bill, they will remember the story that was told to them by the advocate or the ambassador, and they will vote, hopefully, yes, in favor of it. So what's really important and also very effective is our advocates have been incredibly instrumental in increasing our funding from the government. So a number of years ago, we were, I think it was about 2011, we had only gotten from the government about $455, I think, million in funding for research and care. And now we've quadrupled that. So now we're receiving $2.3 billion from the National Institutes of Health, from the government, to help us.
But I believe that a bill was signed just at the end of December. It was $100 million over 5 years, $20 million a year for research and treatment for Alzheimer's disease.
Possibly as part of this, but it's definitely more aware, and they're more aware of it, and they're giving us more money in regards to research. But we also, as the Alzheimer's Association, we're the biggest nonprofit funder of research.
Right, right.
So not only the NIH is increasing, but of course we need more. You know, you think about cancer and HIV, 4, 5, and 6 billion, and we only have 2 billion.
Right.
And yet our death rates are way greater.
Yes. Tell me a little bit about the people that, you know, not that you really want to talk about death and dying, but I mean, it is a reality, the number of people that die from Alzheimer's disease as opposed to like prostate and breast cancer.
Yeah,
the heart disease has gone down and Alzheimer's disease has gone up in those
Last year,
statistics.
145% our death rates increased. Oh. And Alzheimer's kills more people than breast and prostate cancer combined. So there are many things you can look at. You can look at, wow, we need more money for research. Think about all the money that went into, and you know, we used to talk about cancer this way, and we used to talk about HIV, but now people have survived, can be cancer survivors, and are living with HIV and AIDS. Right. So we want to get to that point, you know, because it is a fatal disease, and there is no way to prevent it or slow or cure. So we need more research to get to that point.
Yeah, isn't it like the sixth leading cause of death in the United States?
And even that number, you know, is it really put on the death certificate?
Right.
So that number could be skewed a little.
Right, because a person probably dies of something else, but they had Alzheimer's disease.
And is that the cause?
And is that the cause?
Right, so is that number even skewed a little bit?
Because your brain with Alzheimer's shrinks.
Right.
And so your brain controls everything. So when your brain shrinks, it loses the ability to control your swallowing, your organs,
Absolutely.
I mean, everything.
Involuntary functions,
Right, you know, as a speech and language pathologist, I've worked with a lot of people with Alzheimer's disease, you know, dementia, swallowing, and, you know, that's probably a whole other topic about people's their tastes change, their ability to chew and swallow change, consistencies of foods, of solid foods, of liquid foods. That's an entirely other topic for conversation.
And that's why, you know, when we work with families, you know, hospice should be something to consider. People, I think, historically have thought of hospice with cancer patients, but this is a fatal disease, so you want that support and services from hospice at the end stage. So that's something that we want to educate people about as well.
Yeah, you know, I have to say that, you know, just people, they just have this stigma about it. They are aware of it. I feel as though it kind of, even though we're discussing it here today, and I'm hoping that programs like this will, you know, find traction on a greater level, at the state level, on the national level, because I feel like it's there, but it like percolates beneath the surface, like you mentioned, breast cancer and AIDS, which have become topics of national conversations, and I would like this to become that as well. I'm sure you do as well.
I think when I first started my first health fair table, someone said, oh, that's the scary table, that's the Alzheimer's table. And now I think people are coming up. I see more people, not enough, not as many as I'd like, but coming up asking questions and realizing that it's not their fault. I never forget someone in my early stage group who had the diagnosis. He said, you know, I finally realized one day I woke up that this is not my fault.
Right.
I didn't, you know, do anything wrong. And I think to have that story,
You know, it's interesting you say that, because I was, a couple of months ago, somebody asked me to cover at a facility for the speech and language pathologist, and there was a gentleman who came, and I was sitting in this office with 2 other professionals, a physical and occupational therapist, both of whom I knew for many years. And the man kept saying the same thing over and over again. They were rather dismissive, and they didn't even look at him. And after he rolled away, because he was in a wheelchair, I said, you know, this is not his fault. This is a disease process. Oh, he says the same thing over and over again. I understand that.
So we need to educate people.
So education is so key, not only for families, not only for the person who has the disease, but for caregivers, not just custodial caregivers like CNAs and nurses, but anybody who encounters someone with Alzheimer's disease, dementia.
And I teach, and I always say, focus on how are you making that person feel, not facts. So focus on feelings, not fact.
Correct.
This person with dementia, so the amygdala, we always use this when we do training, is our emotion, our feeling. That seems to stay intact through the journey of this disease. So we have to think about, as we are caring for somebody with dementia, how is my response? How is what I'm saying making them feel? Forget about facts. It's affecting cognition.
Correct.
So how am I making them feel? Focus very simply, if you have to think of what is a good tip, focus on feelings, not fact. How can I make that person feel better?
And also realize that as you approach someone, it's very, very important to approach them positively from the front with a smile, because sometimes, because of what's happening with their brain, they may not be able to comprehend the sentence that you're saying, but they can feel your essence, and they know the energy that you're giving. So approaching with positivity may lift their spirits as well.
Correct, and especially if they're in an environment with unfamiliar people.
Absolutely.
That makes it even more of a, you know, situation where they could, you know, become stressed, become agitated, and then that creates a whole other dynamic.
Right. How would we feel if we're in a place where we don't recognize anyone? I'll share the example when you walk down the hallway in high school and you're petrified, and all of a sudden somebody smiles at you and says, "Hey," and you have that relief, you know, de-stress a little bit. So again, understanding the person, if they don't know where they are, if they're not sure what they're supposed to do next, that ability to plan ahead, you know, how would we feel, and focus on how can we make their day better by understanding that.
You know, and I use similar examples. I say, think of yourself in a foreign country, because sometimes their understanding of what's being said is also dwindling. Yep. So think of yourself in a foreign country, and you wake up in a hospital and people come to talk to you. You don't know what they're saying, and you have a need and you're trying to get it across, and nobody is understanding you, and just think of how you would feel in that situation.
And I think
horrible.
We have to focus more on individual strengths rather than their weaknesses. So often, I think, maybe in the healthcare system, where when I used to work, we'd write down, "Oh, can't walk, can no longer," incontinent. We write down things that they can no longer do.
Correct.
And for professionals as well as family, can we focus on what can they still do, rather than their weakness?
So I thought it would be great if we talked about how people can get involved. I think June is Alzheimer's Awareness Month, isn't it? And there are all kinds of walks scheduled. So tell us about that.
Right, June is Alzheimer's and Brain Awareness Month.
Oh, okay.
Right? So what we're doing is we're trying to turn the entire state purple for awareness, because purple is our color, hence what we're wearing. But Alzheimer's and Brain Awareness Month, and you know, the big focus is really that it's time to talk about your memory concerns, and let's learn what the 10 signs are, and learn about taking those concerns to the doctor. So we have a lot of things going on in June, a lot of classes going on, a lot of landmarks are turning purple, lit up, etc.
Oh, great. Share about the longest day.
And then the 21st of this month is the longest day, which is the longest day of the year, the summer solstice. And it's actually a fundraiser. So what we have folks do is something they love, turn their passion into a fundraiser. And you can do it on or around the longest day, the 21st. And it's to honor your person who is the person with the disease and the caregiver. Because we say that caregivers have the longest day every day. Because it's so much work that they're doing. It's so challenging.
It's more than 24 hours, I can tell you that.
Absolutely. So the longest day is a fundraiser that people can get involved in and do anything, and they can just sign up on our website.
I'm going to kayak.
You're going to kayak?
Oh,
yes.
I've always wanted to kayak.
You can join my team.
I've always wanted to kayak.
Oh my gosh, there's flag football, people are playing mahjong, people are playing bridge, people are dancing. There's all sorts of things that you can do.
Dancing, that's my other passion. Can I be in two places
you
at the same time? Can I dance in the kayak?
Yep.
Oh, wow, good balance. Good for you. Yes, and then there's also, we have 7 walks in the fall across the state. It's Walk to End Alzheimer's. It's our signature event, and people can sign up teams anytime. They can sign them up now, and you just raise some money that goes to care and support and research and all the things that we do. But the walks themselves are the most amazing, beautiful ceremonies. We have these called the Promise Garden flower ceremonies. Everyone has a different color flower representing what your role is in the disease. So if you have a purple flower, it means you lost someone. Someone passed along. If you have a yellow flower, it means you're the caregiver. If you have an orange flower, it means you support the cause. And if you have a blue flower, it means that you have the disease.
Oh my, I have the
beautiful
chills.
ceremony.
Oh
everyone
my gosh.
holds the flowers up, and everyone, when you look around and see thousands of people with these beautiful flowers and realize that you're not alone and that everyone there gets it, it is the most beautiful, beautiful thing.
Absolutely.
So you can find out about our 7 walks on our website, which is alz.org/CT, and we'd love for you to come volunteer at the walk, or we also need volunteers.
So speaking of volunteers, you know, what we know is that we're not reaching enough people. There's about 21 of us in the Connecticut chapter. So what we realized, how are we going to reach more people? And that's through volunteerism. So as a program director, we're going to be training people to help us with our curriculum and to go out there and help be community educators. So if anyone is interested in being an educator for me, we have going to have a volunteer community website to help us with education, but also if you want to help with, as a representative and help us with health fairs, just to get the word out, to have our brochures, have our helpline, have our materials ready. So we'd love to have community educators to help us with our reach.
Oh, listen, I think you just got one.
All right. Kayaker and an educator. Perfect.
Fantastic. You know, what's really hard and what we hear all the time, unfortunately, is, gosh, I wish I knew about you guys back then when my dad was sick.
Oh, I get that also.
And, well, this is what we want to change, right? That's why June is Alzheimer's and Brain Awareness Month. That's why we do all what we do, just to elevate the awareness that we are here. You don't have to go through this journey alone. We're here for you. Please reach out and please share with your friends what we have, the resources.
Yeah, I get that also. Where were you 5 years ago or 3 years ago?
So many people say that.
Right.
Yeah. We don't want that to happen.
It's tragic in a way because people struggle during those times, and it's important for them to know there is support out there. There's a way to get involved. There's a way for them to get help, not only for them to get help, but for their loved one who has the disease. So I think what you guys are doing is just phenomenal.
Well, thank
and
you
I'm
for having us here
proud
to spread
be,
the word.
I'm proud to be part of it, and I'm proud to have you here today. So
thank you so much.
And we'll see you next time at the Golden Years Understanding Better Living.